Welcome to the Die As Cast podcast.
All right, you guys. Welcome back, everyone. This is our second episode of Table Talk. This is the Die As Cast podcast. I am Kevin Cork. We again, for our Table Talk, have with us Diego and Madeline. Diego, do you want to tell us a little bit about your character? Not that we'll be talking about your character or to your character, but let's talk about your character.
Like, you mean my my personal character? Like,
yeah, like how noble you are.
Moral values.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diego Strettle. I'm playing Xisk, a piney cleric, in the Die As Cast podcast.
Madeline, tell us about your character.
Yes, my name is Madeline Hunter-Smith, and I play Maeve Maldorava on the Die As Cast podcast.
Yeah.
And who and what is Maeve?
She is a Dampier celestial warlock.
What we're going to be talking about today is a couple of things. I want to talk a little bit about, ask the two of you about, because this is brand new, these characters. You both are experienced D&D players, but you're brand new to the Kobold Press. So I want to talk just quickly about how you're feeling about being a piney. We'll elaborate again for what that is for people who don't know. And also about Madeline for being a Dampier. Just to give you everyone, if this is your first one you're listening to of our series, you should just go back and at least listen to the first Table Talk. Yeah, because we're not going to recap the whole thing. It's been amazing, and they're surviving by the skin of their teeth.
Over and over.
Yeah, we just had to take a break. The tension was too high to keep going. We'll start with you, Maddie, because you are anxious and raring to go about. I just want to get your, and this is really Kevin just asking, what you are thinking about your Dampier character. I assume you are familiar with Sorceress from past games, or is Sorceress
Warlock?
Neither of those, yeah.
We got there.
All right. Yeah, Sorcerer, Warlock. I don't know. It's all a blur to me.
Bunch of nerds.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because, like, I've actually never played a straight spellcaster before. I usually go for, like, rogues, fighters, barbarian. Barbarian's my favorite class. So this, like, actually using spells and stuff as my core combat mechanic and core roleplay mechanic is really a fun challenge.
Well, especially with the Warlock then, because you have to be focused.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You have to know what you're going to use your 2 spell slots on or whatever, right? Like, but I think I like that. I like the rules of Warlock. It doesn't feel like as overwhelming to me as like a wizard might. But Maeve, I'm really digging her. I think she's got a lot of parts of me in her, which makes her really easy to play. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but
it's all great. There's no right or wrong. The Dampier aspect, the race itself, the idea of being the half vampire.
Oh, it's so cool. I think that speaks a lot to, like, identity crises that, like, everybody goes through, especially being a teenager. Like, that part of your life is just all figuring out who you are. And what's really interesting about the Dampier race is, like, they have two parts of 2 worlds kind of put into one being, which makes them doubly complex. I don't know. I'm really liking it. It does bring up, like, questions for me, like, how fast, like, does she grow up? Like, what is Dampier puberty like? What does that look like? And then what kinds of...
Wow. Yeah, you're right.
Well, like, it's something I thought about. I'm like, does that... how is she doing her life as a 16-year-old? And like, I don't know, how do people respond to Dampier, do people think they're like abominations, or do they just consider them another race in the world? Like, all of that stuff is very interesting to me, and I'm excited to find out more about it as we play.
I found that really interesting when we showed up to the seat of Mavros, and like suddenly we met a Dampier, and like there are all these like different races that like a panda bear.
Yeah, panda bear.
And there's a piney, and suddenly there's like a few other Dampier in the city, and like it's super chill. There's even a blood bar in the town.
But that makes me wonder, is it like specific to Mavros? Because it's like a gathering of all these people. Like if Maeve was to go somewhere else, would she be received the same way? Or, you know, would there be a couple looky-loos who were not a fan? I don't know. Yeah. That's always the fear in, like, at least for me, in like playing a tiefling, for example, going back to like the that's
original,
a great example.
of just like, am I gonna have to like role play every single city being like, I have to hide, no one can see me? Like that's like that's fun a few times, but then it's like, all right.
Well, I think that the Seat of Mavros, especially around the mustering, is going to be more cosmopolitan, because Mavros himself accepts fighters and warriors from all races. Right. So, you know, the clerics wouldn't have any necessarily racial biases. They certainly have class biases in that they would see, you know, fighters and clerics as being paladins for sure, as being sort of the best thing to be, and they would be dismissive of warlocks and sorcerers and certainly wizards.
Interesting.
So, but in terms of having the the variety of races, whether you have a ghoul fighter or a goblin paladin or a furbog ranger, I think they would all be the furbogs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Whether they would all be accepted temporarily. Now, whether the individuals in the thing, because again, it's people gathered from across things, so there'd be lots of biases and lots of isolated types that would be coming to Mavros. And one of the things I wanted to include in that, well, we've touched on it, is the fact that there's going to be fighting all the time. Like, there's just going to be people, constant bar fights. It's going to be like the worst spring break ever, because everybody's getting drunk, and there's specifically no rules around that particular aspect.
So every other spring break.
Right. With swords, with axes.
Oh yeah, there's just weapons involved. Cool.
And deadly spells,
cool. Bye, Mom. Going to spring break.
That's right. Take your axe, honey.
The seat of Mavros.
Use the two-handed.
Use the two-handed.
Make sure you enter your rage.
That's right. Talk about carrying protection. Literally.
Oh my God. Hey, we love jokes.
You're right. You have many layers of conflict, or at least dichotomy, inside Maeve.
Like an onion.
Like an onion, which is now sort of totally derailed the analogy I was going to go through. But I love that fact that, yes, there is that human vampire side and those basic conflicts. There's the teenage thing, working out what adulthood looks like. And there's also the fact that you are a warlock, which tends to be not a happy-go-lucky class, but you have the celestial side.
Yes, my unicorn.
Yes. So you have all sorts of things going on in to give you that rich texture of Maeve.
It's a lot of dualities.
Oh, rich texture. I like that. Yeah, no, I really love this character. I think she's going to grow into a force to be reckoned with on all accounts.
All right.
If she survives.
If she lives, yeah. There is, like, I've had some pretty hairy close calls, so, like, something I do find interesting about Maeve, too, is, like, how her vampirism works in the world. Like she has this predatory charm, and I wonder, I haven't discovered it yet, but, like, I wonder how she feels about using it. Like, I wonder if she feels good about using her vampiric powers, or if she, you know, would rather rely on celestial magic. I don't know. It's that little racial thing where she's like, I don't know if I want to be like this.
Do you think she might feel guilty or something?
Yeah.
If it wasn't called predatory charm, if it was called cuteness.
Cuteness.
Like what I'm saying is...
Yeah, it's the predatory connotation that is kind of doing that for me.
If it was just called being charming, then I think Maeve would just use, like a teenager would use whatever she has. Or maybe it's even more innocent. Maybe she doesn't even realize.
I think she realizes.
All right.
I think, Kevin, teenage girls are pretty smart.
It's true. Smarter than teenage boys, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Burn, boys. Suck it.
Yeah, learn now.
Yeah. That actually leads to a couple of related questions that we've gotten about Maeve. The first one was, what would happen if she didn't get blood at all?
Oh, I don't actually know. And that's another like little racial thing that I'm excited to discover. Like how does her vampirism affect her world? I think like part of me believes that she does need it to some extent, but maybe that's part of her arc, realizing that she doesn't. Like maybe it's just a holdover from her past that she'll eventually come to lose. I'm not sure.
Right, because she grew up having blood regularly. She would have,
absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
But according to Kobold Press, Dhampir do not need blood to live. So I'm wondering if for Maeve it's just like a cultural thing that maybe she's been trained to believe that she does need it.
Interesting.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, another aspect of it that we could talk about or discover is maybe if she doesn't have blood, say, on a weekly basis, she starts to lose things like her predatory charm. She doesn't need it to live, but she would need it to manifest some of her Dhampir skills.
That's interesting. Because then that would play into how much of her human side does she want to embrace versus how much of her vampire side. That's, the moral quandaries surrounding drinking blood.
That's right, especially when you don't need it. You just want it. You just like it.
You just want it. That's just tasty.
No, that's good.
I don't need it. I can stop anytime I want.
I can stop whenever
I just don't want to. Semi-related, well, not really related, except that it deals with Maeve. Is Maeve's father a ruler?
Erasmus, the vampire?
I assume that's, yes.
Yeah.
That's who they're referring to.
I think so. He is and he isn't. Like, I think he does answer to probably older, stronger vampires, which is why Maeve following the rules is so important. But I also think that...
So he's like a duke, not a king.
Yeah, I would say he's probably more of like a duke or like a lord, if we want to get into labels.
Yes, we always want to get into labels.
We do.
So does that mean that Maeve is a princess?
I think she's noble, certainly. Yeah, I don't think... And, like, she lived a pretty cushy life in the keep, like, you know, minus all of the monstrous, like, the blood eating and the torture and the captives and everything, you know. But, like, she lived a pretty comfy little life. So I think she's definitely nobility. But I think part of her style is to, like, kind of reject that. Like, she does have that goth edge where she's... like, down with authority kind of thing. So I wonder if that's like another layer to her that she'll have to grapple with leaving behind or carrying forward into her life.
And then final one, and then we'll jump to Xisk. Has she been with her elf?
Been with? I don't think so. like
They're kiss partners.
They kiss partners. I think they might have. I don't actually think they've kissed. I don't think this relationship. It's so interesting because even me as a player, I don't know how Maeve. Like, I don't know anything about Veridin. Like, he just showed up in the keep as like a prisoner, and he and Maeve got close. And I think she kind of puts him on this pedestal of like, he's my soulmate, when he could very well just be a guy.
He's just a guy.
He's a 16-year-old's soulmate.
Yeah, exactly.
What she's been thinking about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the time. He probably like, they probably confided in each other a lot. And so I feel like Maeve developed some sort of emotional attachment to him. And that's kind of where this is coming from, where she like in the first couple episodes where she's trying to find him so desperately because he's really been her only true friend.
Right.
I don't know if he considers himself like the same extent of relationship that she considers him, but I guess we will find out. Or not,
Right.
because Veridan's best buddies with Aramis now, so we might never see him again.
Very good. All right, Diego. Thanks, Maeve. Thanks, Madeline.
Oh, yeah, hey, you're welcome.
All right, let's talk the basic thing about Xisk. What are you enjoying about the Piney race? Or what have you discovered, good or bad, about the Piney race that you find interesting?
About the Piney race.
Have you not yet done it? I don't want to imply one thing or the other. I just want to get a sense of what you think about the Piney, or whether it's something you're still developing, or I want to leave it as open-ended as possible.
I haven't really discovered much about the Piney race. I really like the kind of history that we've built around like family and all that stuff. I think that's really interesting, and excited to find out more and like play with that. But out in the world, yeah, it's just like, it doesn't, so far, at least, again, at the Seed of Mavros, it's like this like soup callback. It's like soup of different like cultures that all come together and hang out, and no one really seems to be like weirded out by new like races or anything. So it's kind of different. In that, yeah, I'm excited to see like how people react in other places to, a tree walking around the town in like armor and ready to fight,
And I think just now, I would imagine that Pineys are among the rarer races.
Definitely. I feel the same way. They're probably pretty secluded.
Yeah. Are they rare because they're genuinely rare, or are they rare because they don't come to like urban areas? They kind of just keep to themselves.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing with the Pineys is that they were, well, at least in the world we've built, is that they came from the Margrave, which is this forest that kind of the magic has started to dissipate in. Right? Am I right in saying that, Kevin?
Yeah, and I'm going by memory. I believe what's happened with Margrave is it's had chunks of it torn away and burnt down. So yes, it's lessened its power from old Margrave, which was, a big, huge, foreboding, magical forest. But there is still elements of that for sure. There was some reason that your family ended up in one of the remnant forests.
In the Road Guard. It was because they were sent out to, spread the seeds of the Piney people.
Like
of the Pinion. Yeah, kind of.
Or like Johnny Appleseed. One of the two.
Oh, no.
Choose your fighter.
But so my parents were sent out, and then they are, they start our little family of 3 siblings.
Now,
my twin, and my older brother.
That's right. And we haven't really dug into that. We've talked more about Maeve's background, or maybe it's just Maeve talking more about her background than
I talk a lot.
Than actually either Xisk or Gideon. We don't know a lot about either of your families, actually. Now that I think about it.
No, we don't. Yeah. Not. Yeah, we haven't talked about it much in the podcast. Like, because I feel like Xisk he's such a curious person, so he's always asking.
Well, it's hard because Gideon's really clammy.
I know.
Absolutely does not share.
And we've got a boatload of work in this town. Like, there's always something happening. So there's
Always.
That's sort of the D&D aspect, right? If you set up an adventure, but the adventure is just sort of sitting around smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee, it tends to reduce the level of interest, especially with an audio podcast. It's just, although we could definitely have an episode where you guys it's all like 2 a.m. in the bar. In fact, maybe one of our table talks should just be the three characters sitting around, sitting in a bar after some brutal thing, just talking about it.
I feel like we could do that within the episode too. Like I don't.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It could be an actual. It could be an actual. You bet. Let's crank it in there. Let's get it in there for sure. All right. So related. I mean, one of the interesting other things about Pineys is I don't think their culture is as present as the Dhampir, especially because there is whole recognized nations now of vampires and undead and ghouls. So they would be literally more represented because there's so many of them. So there's, there is the blood bars you guys had the choice to go to, but there wouldn't be necessarily the sap bars for the Pineys.
No maple bars.
No maple
bars.
Although that would get really confusing.
Yeah.
On the maple hole and then the maple bar too. That's weird.
We will. Actually, that's. I don't know if we want to keep this in the recording, but there is a great sci-fi story. Can't think of the name of it. Can't think of anything. But in the story itself, the world has evolved where eating is something you do in private behind a stall, and defecating is the social activity.
No.
And it's just...
That makes me not feel good.
I know, but that's totally a social thing, right? Like, it could totally be the other way. And so, what if Pineys are that way?
Oh! God.
Oh my God.
And Xisk is so amazed that no one wants to talk about it. And Maeve
talk about my maple hole with me.
And Maeve doesn't want to share her time. She wants to go off by herself.
Hey guys, what are you doing this afternoon? You want to go defecate somewhere?
Yeah.
Instead of grabbing a bite.
Let's grab. Yeah, that's right. Let's grab it. Let's grab. Yeah. And oh my God, Maeve's eating right in front of me. I don't like the smell. The smell.
Wow. These people, they're just eating here.
They're just eating out in the open.
Indecency.
They have whole public places for this.
So that was bad.
Although it kind of reflects, if you have a completely different race, it's kind of interesting, right? Like, not that actually we necessarily have to actually explore it on the podcast.
I don't think I want to.
Right. But with Pineys, it would be the least offensive of defecation because it might be just like a couple little pine cones pop out, right?
Oh my God.
Also, by the way, for anyone listening, this isn't like Kobold's Press. This isn't lore.
This isn't canon.
It's canon within our game.
This is the Diascast supplement that we'll be publishing.
Yeah. For some reason, that just came up, and we're like, okay, we're sticking with it.
Yeah, I guess this is just how it is now.
Oh God.
I think you should at least trademark Maple Hole because that already has its own. Yeah.
We're gonna sell T-shirts with just like a swirly maple hole and
honestly, I would wear it. I would wear it.
I actually wrote a I don't know what you'd call it, paper, I guess, in university from one of my philosophy classes based on the concept of if a lion could speak English, you still wouldn't be able to understand what he's talking about. Because the concept is how a lion's brain works is just so completely different than a human brain that there would be no common ground. Yeah, because it would be focused on hearing and scent and not on visual things and their customs, etc., etc. It's that idea of another race being so totally alien and developing things. And honestly, the piney, the piney aspect, like we impose a lot of human things on goblins and one of the characters in one of my games, actually hasn't got into it very much, but one of the things he had talked about when he was creating the character is he wanted to eat a little bit of all of his opponents after besting them, because it was a celebration of that person's strength and bravery.
Okay.
And it was the idea of he would honor that person by carrying on some of that person inside himself. And if he didn't like the opponent, he wouldn't offer to eat them. And I was totally tickled by the idea. He himself has not used it very much because everybody else reacted like, no. But it's that idea of totally alien customs, right? That makes the races as diverse as possible. Anyway, we're getting way off topic.
No, not really. Like, we are talking about, like, you know, because I don't think we've investigated much of Xisk's, you know, culture and stuff.
Yeah.
But something that I find really interesting about, like, D&D is that, like, at least for me, I find myself, like you said, Maddie, like, characters that are, like, still kind of close to, like, your personality. Because I find that playing something in D&D specifically, this is totally separate from, like, my acting life, too far away from who I am is really tough to play in D&D, because there are certain things you want to do with improv or within the game that, like, you find yourself fighting against, like, the whole time you're playing, and I feel like it takes the fun out of it for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
It feels disingenuous. I totally understand what you're saying. Like, you're so focused on playing the character that you lose a lot of that genuine
like spontaneity
love.
Kind of and excitement about certain things, not always, because it is kind of fun to, like, obviously play different than you, and I'm not saying Xisk is exactly like me by any means, but it's just, I don't know where I was going. I'm rambling on now, so
it's a really nice sentiment though, and it makes a lot of sense. I think it rings true for a lot of people who do any sort of role playing, really.
There is that fine line about finding the elements of the character that's similar to your own, and then using those as a way to keep the reactions of the character genuine. I think the interesting thing, especially for some sort of performing aspect, like doing a podcast, is that it really is sort of that next level above just playing the game, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to demonstrate, you're trying to perform the story for a passive listener. So there is a more of an acting element than if you're all sitting around the table each getting into it. So there is an acting element on top of it. But I think for those just playing at the table, if your character has no elements of who you are, or no elements at least of what you would like to explore or be or do, then I think there's always going to be a disconnect. And that, obviously people can still function that way, but that takes away from
your enjoyment as a player.
Yeah. And again, that's a very sort of touchy topic. Like, it could start to drift in all sorts of weird sort of psychoanalytical kinds of things we don't necessarily need to get into.
Oh, God. I can feel my imposter syndrome creeping back up.
But that idea is, it's that, I think maybe I talked about it on that Twitch episode we did. The idea of reconnecting to basic storytelling, sort of the ancestral 20,000 year history of storytelling that we've set aside in the last 50 years or last 100 years. I think that element is really important as part of human connection and human communication.
Yeah.
So, related questions around Xisk. Was he born as a tree? I think we covered this already, but let's elaborate on that just a little bit. And again, I recognize that we're layering on top of Kobold Press's rules as written.
So his parents planted seeds on the ground, and from one of the seeds, two plants came to, like, what's the term? Your
hand motions aren't visible, but
I know no one can see.
They are
my
helping.
hands.
Maeve and I understand.
Does it help if I do this? Bloomed. So 2 plants bloomed out of the seed. And that's my twin, Rend. Rend is my twin. And so, yeah, he was born a plant and then blossomed and aged into a tree. He's also not that old. He's like, I think, early 20s.
Is piney lifespan the same as human lifespan? Like, do you age at the same rate?
I think we age at the same rate. Like, you become an adult at the same rate. But
because trees can be really old.
Really
That's my
old.
thinking. Like,
Yeah, I would
redwoods and
think.
stuff?
Yes.
I don't know I can't remember what Kobold Press is written in the Margrave, but I would think pineys live a long time. Maybe they only have a certain period of active. Maybe they revert back to tree after a couple 100 years or something.
I mean, I also imagine that regardless of whether, like, you know, because they're a tree, they like, trees get really old, but there's magic within them, right? Like, there must be something, like, you know, sylvan about them, or something from, like, the fae.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Within them. It seems it has, like, a lot of fae attributes to them, don't they? Like,
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
feels like that.
I wonder, would it be interesting if they were like the early stage of a treant?
Yeah.
Or like a variant on a treant. Like a treant is like a different race, and pineys are part of
Ooh.
that same sort of branch, but different, like monkeys and people.
Yeah. I was just thinking that. That's interesting. Yeah, like
So
in a
which one's
different-
the monkey in that example? Yeah. If we're going to go walk down that road, Maddie. Yeah. No, I think it's interesting question. And again, it comes back to that whole concept of, yes, the very basic concepts. Although, you know, obviously when Xisk is walking down the street, that's not going to be the kind of stuff that is going to be occurring to him. I love the idea of Xisk being very sheltered for the first 20 years of his life. So his learning is focused less on book learning and more on experiences.
Yeah, totally. And people, and, you know, getting to know customs and things like, why do you drink blood? What, like...
Yeah, that was something I really appreciated. Xisk was not outwardly, like, condemning Maeve for her interest in drinking blood. He was just genuinely curious, which is, I don't know, really wholesome.
Very tentative, but to drink it himself.
yeah, didn't want any part of that, but will happily learn.
No, I think you
But
tried it, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I took a sip and was like, this is not for me. But Griffin asked Xisk a question, because in that episode when he was like, oh, you drink blood, and was like taken aback, Gideon was like, oh, do you eat plants? And Xisk was like, I guess it's kind of similar, isn't it? Like,
damn, you got me.
oh shit, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Is Xisk a vegetarian, or is that an abhorrent idea to the plant?
I think we established that he does like eat mostly plants.
Yeah,
he doesn't.
We had that little traumatic baby carrot episode,
which was the best moment of the podcast, in my opinion.
Oh my god, the little carrot.
Yeah, no, I love that idea, especially when you've tied it in with the knowledge cleric. That whole sense of discovery.
It was what made most sense to me.
Right. No. I mean, as Diego, that's the one that meant the most sense to you. But I'd like the idea of Xisk sort of naturally gravitating to that the god of discovery, knowledge, and things. Although I imagine Thoth is usually seen as like book learning and
Totally.
that kind of stuff. And the fact that Xisk doesn't read at all is so great. Initially, I thought that was going to end up being a problem, but I don't think so.
No, I don't. I mean, there are other people in the party who read. You know, like
I don't have to learn. Someone else can do it.
And this is something that I don't know if I told you, Kevin, but I was thinking back and was like, how did he read the spell script if he can't read? But magic, You know, you can just like the words were on the page, little symbols and things, and they just like flowed out of him. That was the whole idea behind him not being able to read, because Pineys wouldn't have like scripts, you know, paper, because that'd be bad.
We can eat plants, but we draw the line at paper.
We draw the line at killing each other for writing purposes.
Right.
So
yeah, that's fair, because eating plants is to live. Writing is just a convenience.
yeah.
And it's that store of knowledge, especially if they are long-lived. You could see them all sort of sitting in a grove, and the older Pineys just like through the wind, passing, you know, the whispers and things passing on to the... Who knows? Maybe it's like motion of the leaves, or maybe it's all sorts of non-verbal communication kinds of things.
Although I specifically with Xisk, like, I don't think he doesn't know many other Pineys. He just knows his family, right? Because they were sent out.
Yeah.
And his whole life has been around taking care of the road guard forest around him.
No, I like the idea, because, I mean, obviously all three characters are somewhat separate from the conventions of their race. Otherwise, they wouldn't be adventuring. There is that kind of loner aspect. Maeve's is very obvious in terms of her rebellion and in terms of her being distinctive or separate from other warlocks. I like that idea. I mean, we haven't got involved with this with Gideon, but he would be different than most bear folk. You know, the fact that he is a panda bear as opposed to a grizzly bear is probably mostly grizzly bear folk.
Yeah.
And he's
One thing to know about panda bears is that they're deeply, deeply anxious bears. So
Really?
yeah, they have such a hard time. That's why they're endangered. They're too anxious to mate. I'm not kidding.
That's so pure. Oh my god.
There's your next t-shirt right there. Too anxious to mate.
I love it.
It's just two panda bears like side-eyeing each other, like should we approach? Yeah.
Hey. How's it going?
Oh dear.
Eating some bamboo? Like that bamboo?
Somebody write this down. We got ideas.
Yeah, this is gold.
Kevin, I have a question for you.
Okay, you bet.
Who's been your favorite NPC so far?
Let's see. The ones that stand out. Well,
Top 3.
If you don't say Big Willard, Griffin will cry. So.
Big Willard is definitely, and this is always the way. It's sort of a throwaway character becomes like a major character just because he likes interacting with people. I really like, I'm quite enjoying all of them. I think the one that I enjoy the most is Henna.
Ooh. Not Henta.
No, Henta sucks.
Henta, they're both complex characters, but I think Henta has more insecurities and things around her. I think Henna is fully in her own inner groove. And, being a druid and being part of the sort of poly family, I think that she's got the, I think there's many of them that will pop up again as we continue. Big Willard is obviously, he's great.
I wonder when Fester Heath is going to come back and be like, yo, what the fuck? You guys were at my place?
Oh, actually, you know what?
Wait a minute.
My second favorite is the laughing guy, the market.
Oh my god.
What's his name? Hakan.
Hakan.
Yes.
He's too much.
He's so
He's
good.
too much.
Yeah. No, he's
So intense.
and he's lifted pretty verbatim from the cat and mouse module.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously there are certain Kevinisms added into him, but there is
The laughter.
there is
The laughter, yeah.
yeah, and it's just sort of broadening that question. One of the joys about doing the DM is the ability to create these characters that become memorable to the players and hopefully the listeners, and that you can keep having them pop up. And, the episodic nature of D&D, coupled with that concept of you never know a person fully, allows you to really exploit that aspect. And a person that you thought was bad turns out to be good or misunderstood or forced to be doing something. Whereas someone that you had trusted, if they betray you or there's nuances or additional layers, then it adds so much depth and I think, again, sort of, not to sound biased, but sort of human condition to the story.
Yeah.
And it gives the players a more nuanced reaction. Like if, obviously most of the characters are going to be very, very stereotypical surface, but people can pick up on a barmaid or a bartender or a shopkeeper that you didn't think anything of. And all of a sudden the characters just happen to grow really connected to that particular shopkeeper. And that ends up being an ongoing character. And then it turns out later that they are a polymorphed dragon or a reformed demon or, there's all these different things that...
Diego, write this down.
Okay, everyone.
Yeah, and I recognize that even as I'm talking, the two players are like, I really have to pay more attention to Big Willard. I
don't trust him.
I mean, we don't. That's the thing about recording this when it hasn't been released is like, how much do we say about that,
Well, you don't, by the time this one is released, you guys will have had a few more interactions with Big Willard. So. Right,
but not, he. But
so that'll be we're getting a little too meta there as we're figuring out because we don't actually even know. This is one people had asked me why I'm using the Kobold Press material. Part of it obviously was the fact that we had initial conversations with them and they were very supportive, getting us some material to get us started. One of the reasons we even approached them in the first place was because they had created a whole alternative world that is separate from Faerun and Wizards, all the, Wizards of the Coast stuff. But the original concept I had around the campaign was this idea of this post-apocalyptic world or sort of post-war world. And when I came across the sort of waste, the Western wastes that our current our campaign is set in, I really liked the idea of this, it's a little bit of a scramble to live. There's people adapting. There's lots of, blasted areas. And the fact that these great old ones are still slowly wandering around the landscape is very appealing because it effectively means that you cannot develop too much, like civilization just can't go back to sort of the hobbit land of, sunflowers and pumpkins.
So specific.
Well,
specific.
I loved that there was a final scene. It's in the books for sure. I'm sure it's in the movies where after the hobbits go through their massive adventures and trauma and terror, they go back to their little hobbit village and none of the hobbits have known any of the stuff that's gone on. So these guys are like shell-shocked and aged and mature, and they go back to their little village and it's all still, drinking ale and talking about pies. So, and they have that sort of shell shock idea of, soldiers adjusting to life in society. And the idea of the world of Midgard, of the Wasted West, being this place where people have to live in the sort of remnants of the world, remnants of war, makes it, well, it's actually, there's lots of different elements around that if I think about it. I mean, part of the reason everyone's accepting is that there are so few people in a relative way. So it becomes more about everyone's getting together because there's fewer of everybody. And again, obviously there's other organizations and other villages and different things out there in the Wasted West. We haven't gotten into any of those things yet, but there will always be that kind of frontier feeling because it is that idea of, there's lots of serious dangers out there. So people connect if they can find a way to connect. And then just to quickly summarize with the Kobold Pressed, one of the things I really liked about the Kobold Pressed was, the three key things were, number one, that the setting was quite cohesive and developed and completely separate from what I had experience with, which was either my own homebrew stuff or the Wizards of the Coast, Faerun, Sword Coast, all that kind of stuff. Secondly was the fact that there was new races and some new classes. And the third thing, I guess actually the very first thing, was the fact that they have such a wide range of new creatures to encounter. So what I love about that aspect is that experienced D&D players, unless they know, the Tome of Beasts or the Creature Codex and things, are confronted with things like the Doppler rat and have no idea, as opposed to running into an ogre or a beholder or something that people will say, oh, I know you should do this, or don't do this, or don't look them in the eye, or, there's all those things that the players can't help but have their characters know because they know it. Whereas with this, because it's so strange, because it's so out of the ordinary, I think there's a lot of, it recreates or regenerates that feeling of trepidation.
I obviously haven't looked at the I guess I don't know what it's called, but the monster manual for Kobold Press. But it seems that there's a lot of stuff that they've homebrewed. Is that called homebrewed? Because even though they're like a large, it's not like your own kind of. Anyway, you know what I mean. Yeah. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of that stuff. Like, is that the?
Like the Tome of Beasts. I think is like a 400-page book
with like all their own stuff.
Yeah, all mostly? Different. Yeah, and some are variations on ghouls or variations on dragons or whatever. Right. But some of the things are completely unknown and completely different shapes and things. Now, obviously, having said that, there's a ton of monsters in the various Wizards of the Coast material that would be unusual or unknown, and of course, as a DM, I will also tend to sometimes tweak a monster or reskin a monster in a way so that people aren't automatically, countering.
Oh, that. I know. Yeah, I know their vulnerabilities or whatever.
Yeah. So that aspect, but there's definitely creatures. I won't say monsters. Creatures in the Kobold Press material that actually inspire encounters or inspire interactions and things. So that's the quick answer to that. All right. That sort of addresses a lot, or not a lot, but at least some of the questions that I've had, things that I've heard from people. Is there anything else you guys would like to add, sort of based on the reflecting and what we've talked about?
Not really. I just want to say thanks to everybody who does listen. Like, that rules. We're playing our silly little dice game, and it's so much fun, and it's really nice to have, people participating in that with us. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Right. What I have been talking about, we will talk about some more, but what I think we'll do is we will set up a public Discord chat so that people can sign up for that, sign into that, and we will have people posting questions. We'll have a couple of different channels, and then all of us will check in every once in a while and respond to questions and respond to comments. And we'll sort of continue to build the interaction that way. And who knows, that might become the source for future table talks or additional things we're going to do down the road. So if you are new to the Diaz cast, feel free to continue to listen to all the other previous episodes as we build up to this. Obviously, we'd like you to like us on Facebook and all the other social medias. Please like us in iTunes or Google Play or Spotify or wherever you're listening for us. Give us a review and look for us, Diazcast, on Discord. We'll be look forward to hearing from you. So on behalf, on behalf. Blank for a minute on the actual word there.
I saw that happen too. Like, listeners, you couldn't see that, but the cogs were turning.
That's right. Vacant. This is what DMing with Kevin in about 10 years is going to be like.
Just shell-shocked stare.
On behalf of everyone here at the Diazcast, I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Feel free to follow us, and we will talk to you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
We'll see you next week.